Hello everyone, I'm Laura Myth Tamer and welcome to the channel. Alright, so I am going back to the basics today and I am showing you how to play Myth in Wizard101. So the very first thing that Myth is going to throw at you is the use of minions. And this is so unlike any other school. I mean, every school does get a minion of some kind, but Myth in the first part of the game is primarily focused on minions. And personally, as a main Myth player, I don't use them. Never have. I don't really think I ever will. Because the first one you get, it's okay. I mean, it's 0 pip cost, and it does pretty good to get you through the first little bit of the game. But eventually, minions become a waste of pips, as you will see right now. It's going to use X amount of pips. So it just took all of my pips in the time that I could have done a spell to defeat this enemy. Another thing that minions like to do is not only do they not benefit you in that way, but they also do dumb stuff like this. I mean, yes, he's building up pips, but minions love to heal themselves. They love to hit at the worst possible times, especially because all of your minions are going to be Myth minions, which means they like to hit with Myth spells, using your Myth traps, using your feints, using anything that you have on the enemy. The minion is not going to benefit you in that way. So in order to save your turn and to save face, the best thing to do is to just not put any minions in your deck. If you are a solo Myth in the beginning part of the game, I do suggest that you could use some minions, but after Crocotopia, I really would not rely on them anymore, as they actually could severely damage your gameplay. But it's all up to personal preference, and personally, I steer clear of them. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about is Earthquake. Now, Earthquake can be your best friend or your biggest enemy. And the reason behind that is because Earthquake is an AoE, is like one of the first AoEs that you get. And it removes everything from the enemy. So that's really good in terms of shields. It's really good in terms of getting rid of enemies' blades. But the big problem about Earthquake is that if you're playing with a team of people, it also removes their traps that they have on the enemy. So let's say I'm playing right now with a fire, right? And I have a friend over here who is a fire. If I used Earthquake and he had a fire trap on this guy, it would not use his fire trap, it would eat it and take it off of this guy, which means that he no longer has a trap on him. And so that's also a very bad minus of Earthquake. So you gotta be really careful as to when you cast it. But when you do, it can be your best friend because it will remove shields and blades. Per example, here right now. And there goes his blade. So Earthquake can be your friend if you use it at the right time. It's also really beneficial in specific dungeons where the bosses will put on a whole bunch of shields. It removes all shields. So that is a big plus of Earthquake. Just don't do it if your friends have traps on the enemies. Okay, so another really cool spell that Myth has is Cleanse Ward. This spell will remove traps that are all traps. I think it may actually only be one trap. But it will remove a trap that the enemy has put on you. So that way, if the enemy does damage of that specific school, it will remove the trap from that school. So a pet that I recommend getting as a Myth Wizard, especially if you're a low level, is the Blinking Eye pet. This gives you a Lord Humongo Frog that does 870 to 930 Myth damage. And that Humongo Frog has been lifesaver to me many different occasions. Not to mention that if it is possible, you stun all of your enemies at the end of the hit. These guys are going to die, obviously, but if they weren't, then they would be stunned for that turn that I hit with Humongo Frog, which can be super helpful in a team situation, to have all the enemies be stunned and take damage, and then take more damage from your teammates. A really cool thing that Myth can do that a lot of other schools besides Balance can't do is a multi-hit spell. For instance, a good way to set a multi-hit spell up is to put 2 traps on the enemy like so. And then I'm going to hit with my multi-hit spell. And the goal is that the first hit will knock out the first trap, and the second hit will knock out the second trap. So Minotaur is really cool in that way, that it does multiple damage, because you can use more than one resource, such as a trap. A lot of other schools don't get to do this. You can also do this by stacking feints, and also stacking anything you want to stack. So there goes the first hit, and here comes the second one, which ultimately killed him. Another really beneficial spell that Myth has is Stun. This is also an alternative to Earthquake if you're trying to stop someone from using a blade. So let's say that my enemy has a blade and my health is in critical condition. I can cast Stun, and it will stop my enemy from using his blade for 1 turn, which gives me just enough time in order to build up enough pips so I can hit. Another alternative to using Earthquake if you don't want to affect your teammates' stuff is using either Pierce or Shatter. Shatter will remove all positive shields from an enemy, which means they will remove all shields. But the cost of Shatter is that it is 3 pips. Now, if you want to use Pierce, Pierce is no pips and it removes 1 shield from the enemy. This would be really useful if the enemy has a tower shield that's pesky and hard to deal with, but it does the same thing that Earthquake does in terms of removing shields, which can be super helpful in team play and sometimes even in solo play with that pesky mist shield that sometimes occurs, or a storm shield if you're using a prism. So as you can see, Myth has a lot of versatility and uniqueness to it that you don't see in a lot of other schools. It can play the middleman, or it can play a heavy hitter as a solo play. I hope that this helped encourage you to play your Myth more, and maybe even helped you to improve your solo play as a Myth, or your team play as a Myth. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye!